Welcome to the Food Freedom and Life Mastery podcast with me, your host, Harry Snell. Welcome to podcast episode number 2. Hopefully you can't hear that annoying sound in the background. As with anything you try and do at home, there's always noises. And today it's the wind. Windy, horrible day, and my window is whistling. But we ignore those things, don't we? So I wanted to start off this podcast just by saying that I got inspired. The reason I'm doing this podcast is that I procrastinated for a long time. I had the idea of putting out more information, just doing these little sound bites, but I never got around to it because it's one extra thing to do. And I know I have to be consistent with it for it to be any significance, for it to take off, for people to actually tune in. And that can be the difficult thing sometimes with starting something new, just getting started. And so I was listening to one of my friends, Steve, from the gym. Steve works in the gym, podcast, and he does very, very short, quick, sound bitey, off the cuff, without any planning kind of podcasts. And I thought, why can't I just do that? Just start recording and just see what comes out. So that's what I'm doing. So in the previous episode number 1, I introduced you to the conscious and unconscious parts of your mind. So these are the foundations of understanding how you work and how change happens. So today I'd like to dig into the unconscious part of your brain a little bit more, because for me it's the most powerful thing and the biggest thing that holds people back from getting their goals, whether it is weight loss or anything else you're trying to achieve in life. So just a quick recap. So you have your conscious part of the brain. This is the logical, language thinking, creative part of your brain. It's the newer part of your brain. And we can liken it to a committee of old guys. So it's really good at thinking, coming up with things, but it's slow. It's important, it has a function, but it doesn't help with everything. The unconscious part of your brain is the older part of the mind, the part that formed a long time ago. We often refer to it as the lizard brain or the autopilot brain, the survival brain. And this part of the brain is very quick, but it's not logical. It speaks a different language, if you will, to the conscious mind. So the conscious mind speaks in logic and language, whereas the unconscious mind speaks in emotions and associations. So it learns through these things. And that's one of the reasons you can't change those subconscious things just by forcing yourself, as you would do with the conscious part of your brain. And so it's often very, very difficult for people to change this part of the mind. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, this part of the mind dictates around 95% of your actions and behaviors in your day. So it's extremely important to make sure what it understands or what it's doing is in alignment with your goal. So let's just dive into a little bit about it. So this part of the brain, the unconscious brain, its primary function is survival. It's there to keep you alive. And so it doesn't care about anything else. It cares about the now. It doesn't care about your goal, which you set with your conscious brain. So if you're overweight, if you want to lose weight, then it doesn't care about the goal in the future. It cares about keeping you alive now. It cares about what's going on now. So when you decide, I'm going to cut down on my eating, cut out all these treats and do extra exercise, this is a little bit conflicting for it a lot conflicting for it. Because if we think about survival, when we dig down into that, expending extra energy and cutting down on your food is actually a negative in terms of what it sees. So if you think about this part of the brain, it was formed a long time ago when we were mere cavemen and cave women, and everything around us was a threat. So if we stepped out of our cave, there was a threat that something might jump out and kill us. If we went and looked for food, we might not come back. If we went and looked for food, we might not actually find any. So food is extremely important. Time is important, and efficiency is important as well, because efficiency means saving energy. So all these things come into this survival thing. So when we think about what the unconscious mind is doing, we have to consider these things. Another thing that's important to it is familiarity. So I like the phrase, safe is same. Same is safe. So if something is familiar to a survival brain, that's good, because you didn't die last time it happened. And so it likes that kind of familiarity. And we can think about these things, I'm going to talk about them in a few minutes, in terms of illogical things you might do, but they do make sense in terms of the unconscious survival brain. So it likes familiarity, it likes sequences, it likes things that you usually do. So just a quick example of that, let's say you go for a walk and you've got like a circular route. This is actually my example, this is something I do every day. I walk every morning just for a few minutes just to get my body moving, and I always walk in the same direction around the circle. The other day, I thought I'll walk the other way, and my brain was like, it's like resisting it because it's different. I know logically there's no negative to walking around the other way, but for my survival brain, there is. And thinking about it, what might it be looking at? Number one, it's different, so it's not the same. So there's a potential threat. And also, it's going to take more thinking because it's a different route. So although it's a little bit more thinking, it's not the same. Anything that's different requires more actual thought. So these are things that make you resist change. That's a simple example of change, but my brain resisted it. Going back to a few minutes ago, I was talking about the weight loss example. With weight loss, you're gonna have to consider changing quite a few things in your life. And like I said, and like you probably know as well, diet and exercise are those main things. So expending extra energy through movement and exercise is seen as a negative for that part of the brain. Cutting down your food is seen as a negative because it wants to eat enough to not die. And we're wired to not be, this part of the brain was formed when supermarkets and food availability was not as high as it is now. So when you see food, you want it. That's how it was in those days. That would determine your survival. Nowadays, we have food on tap. You can literally get anything you want, whenever you want, in most places. But that's not how your brain was formed. Your brain wasn't formed around these things. So humans have created an environment that don't really fit with how this part of the brain works. So I talked about, how it works, familiarity and survival. These are really important things. So next, I just want to chat about a few illogical things that your brain might do that annoy you, but it's actually there for a reason. So again, reminding you, it's all about keeping you safe and survival. So when you set a goal for yourself with a conscious mind, there's a possibility that you might fail. And quite a lot of people that are trying to lose weight have a bad opinion of themselves. So it might be, I don't like myself, I judge myself, I can't fit into my clothes, what's wrong with me, I look fat, I look ugly, all these kind of things. Also, a lot of people that have tried weight loss have tried it many times and failed many times. And this feeds back into this self-worth of, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough. So setting out on a goal, there's a potential of failure. And so to that unconscious mind that's looking out for you, it sees these emotions as a threat, because any negative emotion indicates some kind of threat to you. So when you're feeling down, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling just all these, negative thoughts. It's on the lookout for what's wrong. We want to get rid of these things. So one of the easiest ways to do that is let's just not try, because then there's no chance we're going to fail if we don't try. And so this is illogical, but to the survival part of the brain, the unconscious mind, it's looking out for you, it's solving a problem, it's keeping you safe in the short term. The same with people that don't necessarily fully commit to their goal. So they say, yeah, I want to lose weight, but there's this thing in the back of their mind, or the subconscious part of the mind, that's like, well, if you prove yourself right that you're not enough, then you're going to feel worse. So we don't want that. So let's just half commit to it. We'll have an excuse then. So you didn't really have enough time to put into it. So it's not the fact that you weren't enough, it's just you didn't have enough time, or you were busy, you were doing something else at the same time, you had a big project on. So it's not about you, it's just about the other thing. Yeah, all these kind of things. So having an excuse is a good reason to sort of get around these feelings. So it comes up with all these really weird logical things. And this is really common. I saw an example actually that I liked with like students. So let's say there's an exam and the results affect how you feel about yourself. But if you don't put in the work, then you can say to yourself, well, it was not about my intelligence, I just didn't put the work in. Or it's not about my intelligence, I went out the night before and got drunk, so it's because I was tired and hungover. And so, again, these illogical things are actually making sense now, because the mind is trying to protect you from a hit to your self-worth, which causes negative emotions, which is then a threat. It's seen as a threat, which it wants to get rid of. So all these crazy things, it fascinates me. And that's why as well, things like, more extreme example, someone that's in an abusive relationship, they stay because it's familiar. So it's something they've been doing for a while. They're familiar with it. The brain is relaxed in the sense of this situation is the same and the steps and the sequences are the same. It's not good, and to your conscious brain, we want to leave, but it's familiar. Leaving the relationship is the unknown. Think back to the caveman times. Stepping out of the cave is the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. So with a relationship, what's going to happen? Could it be worse? And that's the question the unconscious mind is considering. It might be worse off. We're familiar at the moment, so let's just stay. And that's why people make these illogical or seemingly illogical decisions when friends and family are like, what are you doing? You're just repeating this pattern over and over again. That's what the unconscious mind likes. It likes patterns because it's seen as safe. So again, this fascinates me, and it's the answer to a lot of things that make us fail in life, because of course that person in that relationship wants to move on, but their unconscious mind is trying to protect them. The conscious mind wants something else. We want to leave, we want to get a better relationship, but the unconscious mind is trying to keep us with familiarity. Okay? So one other thing that the unconscious mind does is it learns quick and easy ways to solve problems that in the long term might not conform to your goal either. So the common one is stress. Again, seen as a threat to your unconscious mind, because what's this feeling? Why is it there? Let's try and get rid of it. If you have accidentally learnt that something gets rid of that feeling, that stress, then it will use that. And a common one is food. More notably, nice food. So things like chocolate, ice cream, cookies, cake, all those kind of things. So it's not really, or definitely not, the food you actually want. It's the change in feeling. And I'll explain this to you. So take one of your hands and make a fist. Take the left hand, make a fist, put it up in the air. That's the negative feeling, the stress, the unwanted emotions that you have. Take your other fist and put it, let's say, like about a foot away from it in the air. So that's what you want. That's the positive emotion. So you've got the left one, which is the negative, and the right one is the positive. You want to get away from the negative and you want the positive. Now, if you draw an arrow between those, from the negative to the positive, that's the food, that's the chocolate or whatever. So that's the vehicle to go from negative to positive. So it's not the food you want. The food is the vehicle. It's the positive emotion. Food is just the way of getting there. And different people have learnt the different things help that. Remember I said before, the unconscious mind learns with association, and one of the quickest ways for it to learn is through repetition or high emotion. So when you are emotional and you've eaten something, the brain kind of associates, oh, that made us feel better. Let's store that and let's use that next time because that worked. Remember, it doesn't care about your goal, it cares about the now. It cares about solving your problems now. It's not logical. Survival is in the now. It doesn't matter about your goal because if you're dead now, then it doesn't matter about the future. So again, I'm going to say it's over and over again. It doesn't seem logical because it's not the logical part of the brain. So again, just to repeat that before, what I said before. So it's not the food you want, it's the change in feeling. And some people use other things, alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, shopping, whatever changes your feeling, whatever you've accidentally learned. And this is just through association. Another analogy I love, the forest analogy. So the more you do something, the more you repeat something, the easier it is to do. So we can imagine it like a super highway. In your brain, you have neural connections. And the bigger they are, imagine it a road where you can drive down, zoom down 100 miles an hour. It's really easy to do that thing, that action. So if you repeat it over and over again, that you have stress and chocolate solves it, then it's like super easy for that pathway to happen. So this analogy, the forest analogy, let me explain it. You start off with a forest and it's thick and dense and full of trees and plants and whatever, nice and green. It's quite hard to get through it. There's not really any particular route, but there's some small animals that do. Think about the mice and the voles. They kind of like scuttle through, and there's a little like route that they take. It's not very fast. They can scuttle through, but over time, a few bigger animals do take that route as well because it is just a little bit easier to take a route that's already been trodden. So that's the foxes, the badgers, the rabbits, all those kind of things, and it does start to form a little pathway that's kind of visible, and because of that, the bigger ones do as well, the even bigger ones, the deer and whatever else is around. And over time, it starts to form a visible kind of muddy route through the forest. They smash through a few, break off the branches, and it's a lot easier to go down. And then the humans do as well, because that's like, again, the obvious route to go. So it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then as humans do, they think, oh, we want to make this forest into a nice path, a nice place to walk for other people. Let's cut through and make it into a nice path. And so there's this nice dirt track. They've cut away a clearing that's easy to go down. And maybe even as well, they can pave it as well. So it's now quite easy to get through. You can even run down it if you want to, or even cycle down it. So the speeds you can go through this forest are quicker and quicker. We've gone from the vole where it scuttles through to now being able to cycle or run down it at a lot faster speed. And then maybe this track as well over time becomes more of an access path. So they made it wider for cars to go down, the Forestry Commission, or whoever's maintaining the forest. So now a car can go down this path. And so a car can travel quite fast. Again, we've sped up. And then let's say as well, 100 years passes, then they cut down the forest, terrible thing to do, and they make it into an actual road. So lots of cars are coming down and they're getting faster and faster. And then in the future as well, further forward, maybe a motorway as well, zooming down. So we've gone from a thick forest, which is really hard to travel through, to a motorway where you can go down and zoom with no resistance. And this is how neural pathways form. You go from never doing something, never having done something, not being very good at it, and it being very hard to do and feeling like a lot of resistance, to repeating it a number of times, to it becoming super, super easy to do. and quite automatic as well. And that's why sometimes you feel you've just done something without even thinking about it. It's coming from this unconscious part of the brain, which is the autonomous part of the brain. Really common one I do all the time. I pick up my phone to do something and I'm on Facebook or Instagram and I'm like, why am I even here? I didn't even think about this. And it's a set of actions that have fired off in your brain that are really easy to do because you've repeated them over and over again. So the moral of this story, if we can call it a moral, is that if you repeat something over and over again, you get really good at it, whether it's good or bad. And the unconscious mind, again, is illogical. So you might be doing something that doesn't actually support your goal because it's trying to solve your problems, keep you safe in the short term. So there we go. That's the podcast for today. I will see you in the next one. And a quick action for today, have a little think about something you do in your day or in your life that annoys you, but actually might serve a purpose to your unconscious mind. It could be anything. And if you'd like to find out more about what I do, you can find me on YouTube, The Food Freedom Coach, or just type in my name, Harry Snell. I'm also on Instagram at Harry Snell Fitness, or if you'd like to send me an email, go to my website, harrysnell.com.